vidya samadhibihi yavan mano vacha stutva virarama sa kinnavat Maitreya uvacha svasambhavam nishamyaivam tapo vidya samadhibihi yavan mano vacha stutva virarama sakinnavat. Please chant.
Maitreya uvacha swasambhavam nishamyavam tapovidya samadhibhihi yavan mano vachastutva virarama sa kinnavat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Maitreya uvacha swasambhavam nishmayaivam tapo vidya samadhibihi yavan mano vajastutva virarama sakinnavat. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else? Okay. Maitreya uvacha, the great sage Maitreya said, Svasambhavam, the source of his appearance. Nishamya, by seeing. Evam, thus. Tapaha, penance. Vidya, knowledge. Samadhibihi, also by concentration of the mind. Yavat, as far as possible. Manaha, mind. Vachaha, words. Stutva, having prayed. Virarama, became silent. Saha, he, Brahma. Kinhavat, as if tired. Translation and purport by Abhayacharya Narendra Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, after observing the source of his appearance, namely the personality of Godhead, Brahma prayed for his mercy as far as his mind and words would permit him. Thus having prayed, he became silent as if tired from his activities of penance, knowledge, and mental concentration. Purport. Brahma's enlightenment in knowledge was due to the Lord sitting within his heart. After being created, Brahma could not ascertain the source of his appearance, but after penance and mental concentration, he could see the source of his birth, and thus he became enlightened through his heart. The spiritual master outside and the spiritual master within are both representations of the Lord. Unless one has contact with such bona fide representations, one cannot claim to be a spiritual master. Lord Brahma had no opportunity to take the help of a spiritual master from outside because at that time, Brahma himself was the only creature in the universe. Therefore, on becoming satisfied by the prayers of Brahma, the Lord enlightened him about everything from within. Translation again, the sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, after observing the source of his appearance, namely the personality of Godhead, Brahma prayed for his mercy as far as his mind and words would permit him. Thus having prayed, he became silent, as if tired from his activities of penance, knowledge, and mental concentration. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saste Om Yanti Rakshor Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhya Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Okay, so today we are going to discuss the Chaitya Guru, or Krishna's expansion as Paramatma in each of our hearts, who gives us guidance from within when we deserve it and sometimes when we don't deserve it. You know, sometimes we're a little stubborn. He gives us a little push, a nudge in the right direction. He doesn't take away our free will, but he does from time to even when we ask him to. But he does from time to time, if we're being absolutely stubborn, but we have enough sincerity, he will give us a nudge in the right direction. Anyway, but he's guiding from within. So this phrase, Chaitya Guru, it actually appears in the purport, in the print version of the purport. For some reason, the online version of today's purport, it's missing a couple of sentences. So one of those sentences that's in the print is, the Lord is therefore called the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master sitting in the heart. And then the purport in the printed books ends with, the Lord is so kind that he is always prepared to help any living being attain spiritual enlightenment if he simply concentrates his mind to find out the source of his existence. And then there's another sentence in the middle of the purport that's worded a little bit differently, but it's not my intention to make it seem like I'm pointing out flaws or taking some sort of stance on one side or the other on the book edit issues. The best advice I can give to anyone who might be hung up on that or has questions about it is there are actually audio recordings of Srila Prabhupada. So when Srila Prabhupada wrote his purports, he recorded them with his, with his voice on a dictaphone, and then the disciples typed them. And so sometimes with Srila Prabhupada's accent, it's a little unclear, or it was back then, as to what he was saying, and sometimes a word will get changed. The most famous example, of course, is in the older version of Bhagavad Gita, where Srila Prabhupada was talking about the planet of the Pitris, the forefathers. But when he said Pitris, whoever was listening, they just heard trees, so planet of the trees was printed. So in some cases, it's quite better just listening to the audio and understanding. But anyway, I definitely don't want to focus on that, because the idea is if we understand Srila Prabhupada's mood, then whichever we're reading, even if it's with typos, Srila Prabhupada said, even if it's imperfectly composed, the meaning is there, so we can understand the gist. So if we focus on that, if we focus on the principles and not the details of it, then we won't get caught up in these external arguments or confusions or anything like that. But the only reason I bring it up today, because I did bring it up, and that's fair enough, is because we're going to be talking about the Chaitya Guru, and it was in the purport, but since this is the age of quarrel, one might argue that it's not explicitly mentioned in the purport, so maybe I'm taking liberties. But I mean, it's pretty clear that it's implicitly mentioned even in the online version, and it is absolutely explicitly mentioned in the print. But that's what we're going to discuss today, the Chaitya Guru. So, as we've often discussed, Srila Prabhupada will many times, often actually, paraphrase other verses from Shastra when he's writing his purports, right? So he has the commentaries of the previous acharyas that he's looking at, and he's paraphrasing verses from elsewhere in the Shastra that verify what's being said in this, whatever he's commenting on. So in today's purport, as well as in many other places, He's paraphrasing a verse from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 22, verse 47. And this is where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Srila Sanatana Goswami on the process of devotional service. So there are several chapters where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing this. At the end of the Madhya Lila, very good reading material if you're interested. This one, actually, the chapter, I think it's called The Process of Devotional Service. So Lord Chaitanya was instructing Srila Sanatana Goswami how to compile a book to teach others what the process of devotional service is all about. So in that verse, Madhya 22:47, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructs to Srila Sanatana Goswami. He says, Krishna is situated in everyone's heart as the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within. He is kind to some fortunate, when he is kind to some fortunate conditioned soul, he personally gives him lessons so that he can progress in devotional service, instructing the person as the super soul within and the spiritual master without. So oftentimes we'll hear Srila Prabhupada talking about the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within, and in how he actually is expanding himself and leading us, guiding us to the spiritual master on the outside, the external representation, or in this case, the word is without, meanings within, without, not without as in you don't have it, but from the outside. So when we're hearing about the spiritual master being within and without or outside, we are hearing a paraphrase of this verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila. And the spiritual master within is called the Chaitya Guru. And as Srila Prabhupada pointed out in his purport today, that the spiritual master, whether it's the Diksha or the Shiksha, the one who's giving initiation formally, or the one who's just giving bona fide instructions, they are both external manifestations of that internal Chaitya Guru. And that is what we're talking about today. So anyone who we take instructions from or accept as some sort of authority, if they are not properly representing the Supreme Lord, they should not be called or considered to be a guru, right? The term guru these days is very much overused. We hear about, like, basically anyone who's good or expert at something has gotten this tag. We hear about sports gurus and like weather pundits and so on. And although these people may actually be expert in their field, if they are not representing the Supreme Lord, they do not actually live up to the title, and they should not be giving that particular honor of the title, or they also shouldn't be giving our worship, right? But the bona fide spiritual master who is instructing us strictly based on Shastra and having that inspiration from the Chaitya Guru to understand and to explain this philosophy without adding any or without changing anything based on their personal whim, etc. They do deserve this title, and they also deserve the respect, right? Because they're a transparent medium to Krishna, and therefore, during those instructions, in that relationship, we actually appreciate them as our transparent medium to Krishna. And as we, some of us hopefully sing every morning, Shakshad Hari Tvena, Samasa Shastra, the spiritual master in that regard is non-different from Krishna because he's the one that's bringing us to Krishna. So he has the respect and the worship, right? But we shouldn't respect and worship authorities who are just giving us material knowledge. But we tend to do that, right? We tend to not want to, and it's strange. This is how the material world works. But we tend to not want to give that much respect and worship, veneration to a holy person who's preaching about God, right? Because we think, oh, they should be humble. But we do absolutely tend to give our time, our money, our glorification to people that are just instructing us in some sort of mundane subject matter, right? So like financial advisors or something like that. They're helping us make a lot of money. So we're very much glorifying them to other people. We're spreading the their fame to others, and we have a lot of respect. We do anything they tell us like that. So we in the material world, we're mixed up a lot. We can't distinguish reality from illusion, and so it's no surprise. But that's what the guru is for, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. Now, in today's verse, we see that Lord Brahma, he has taken instruction from the Chaitya Guru, right? And this was necessary because, as pointed out, there were no other living beings around, right? So there was no option for the external manifestation because it's just Lord Brahma. But Lord Brahma still had to qualify himself to receive those instructions by way of penance and mental concentration, by way of sincerity, right? And it should be pointed out here that Lord Brahma is not just any schlub. Lord Brahma is always very qualified. So there are countless cosmic manifestations. Each of them has to have a Brahma. In general, there is a qualified jiva who takes that position. But when there isn't a qualified jiva, the Supreme Lord takes that post of Brahma. So it's not just that under some sort of strange circumstance, somebody that's not very qualified can get that position of Brahma. So he's already highly qualified, right? But even that, even being highly qualified, until he had the mercy of the Lord by way of performing the penances and doing the mental concentration, meaning taking himself out of the center and actually putting Krishna in the center. Until then, he was not able to get those internal instructions from the Chaitya Guru. He got the nudge where he heard tapa, right? That was the nudge from within that gave him a hint as to what he needed to do in order to qualify himself to receive those instructions. But until he was able to actually do that, he couldn't get the full internal instructions. So the reason that it is very important to understand this subject matter completely is that some people claim that since it is possible to receive instructions directly from the Supreme Lord from within, then there's absolutely no need whatsoever to accept a spiritual master. In fact, some will claim that accepting a spiritual master can only slow you down because the spiritual master can only preach up to his own level, right? So if there's two options, if there's hearing it directly from the source and hearing it from someone who, you know, uh, maybe doesn't quite get the full gist of what's going on. Generally, you want the most qualified source, right? And so some people argue like this. Some people say, well, if that's an option, well, what's the point of getting a spiritual master who could be fallible, right? So, in order to clear this doubt up, we're actually just going to read a bunch of quotes from Srila Prabhupada regarding the Chaitya Guru. His link to the external guru, the qualification to receive instructions from each of them, as well as the process to gain that qualification, right? Because as we know, Lord Brahma had to gain that qualification. He didn't just have it. And as I also mentioned, he started out highly qualified. We're starting out so many steps below Lord Brahma's level that it's not even worth trying to compare. So anyway, we're going to read some of these quotes and what's the word I'm looking for? Not clarify, rectify. I lost the word. When you and you have a doubt, and then you, I think I just used the word anyway. I lost it, but clear up. It's not the word I wanted, but we're going to clear up that doubt with these quotes. So the first quote I'll read is from, pardon me, the fourth canto, 28th chapter, verse 41, purport, Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada writes, "The Lord is the super soul seated in everyone's heart, and he acts as the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within. However, he gives direct instructions only to the advanced pure devotees. In the beginning, when a devotee is serious and sincere," and these two words are going to come up a lot today, "the Lord gives him directions from within to approach a bona fide spiritual master." All right, so I'll read that again. In the beginning, when a devotee is serious and sincere, the Lord gives him directions from within to approach a bona fide spiritual master. So he gives the nudge. When one is trained by the spiritual master, according to the regulative principles of devotional service, and is situated on the platform of spontaneous attachment for the Lord, Raga Bhakti, the Lord also gives instructions from within. So as long as we're on the platform of sadhana bhakti, we very much need to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. And even after, we still follow those instructions, but on the platform of rag, when we're spontaneously attached, then the Lord is also giving further instructions from within. So that's when he's giving those instructions according to this purport. The next quote I will read is from the purport of Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 158, wherein Srila Prabhupada writes, "It is not possible for a conditioned soul to directly meet Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one becomes a sincere devotee and seriously engages in devotional service," again, both of those words, serious and sincere, are there. So, but if one becomes a sincere devotee and seriously engages in devotional service, Lord Krishna sends an instructing spiritual master to show him favor and invoke his dormant propensity for serving the Supreme. The preceptor appears before the external senses of the fortunate conditioned soul, and at the same time the devotee is guided from within by the Chaitya Guru, Krishna, who is seated as the spiritual master within the heart of the living entity. Right. So these two quotes show how the Chaitya Guru sends the person who is serious and sincere. And that's very important. So the Lord in the heart, he senses our seriousness and our sincerity, and he sends us an instructing spiritual master who matches or who complements our mood, right? This is very important to note because, as Srila Prabhupada points out in his purport to Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 21:19, quote, "Not only is Krishna the supreme worshipful deity for all living entities, but he is also the Guru, or Chaitya Guru, the super soul, who always gives the living entity good counsel. Unfortunately," here's the kicker, "the living entity neglects the Supreme Person's instructions. He thus identifies with the material energy and is consequently overpowered by a kind of fear resulting from accepting himself as the material body and considering paraphernalia related to the material body to be his property." Right? So we get confused because of our misidentification. We're not taking the instructions from within because we're identifying with the body. Continuing this quote, "All types of fruitive results actually come from the spirit's soul. But because he has forgotten his real duty, he is embarrassed by many material consequences such as fear and attachment. That's also a paraphrase, by the way. The only remedy to revert to the service of the Lord and thus be saved from material nature's the only remedy is to revert to the service of the Lord and thus be saved from material nature's unwanted harassment." So to revert to the service of the Lord means that we're not doing it on our own. We're not understanding these internal instructions because we're not actually properly receiving them. We're not proper recipients. Brahma, he was very qualified, but still he had to do some penance and some meditation in order to really show that he understood that, okay, I understand my position, I understand Krishna's position, I understand the relationship. And now it's time to actually get these instructions. But the standard living entity here, who we encounter, we're nowhere near that qualified to be recipients of those instructions. The instructions are there. We're just not getting it because we're so tied up in our false identification that we can't distinguish reality from illusion. So we think, the internal voice in our head is telling us that we need to survive, right? We need to make money, we need to find a way to eat, we need to find a way to shelter ourselves, right? So anamoy, pranamoy, etc., like that. So there's this idea that when we misidentify, we're not actually getting those instructions. So this concept is further cleared up by Srila Prabhupada in the Science of Self-Realization, where Srila Prabhupada is having a conversation with a Mr. O'Grady. This is chapter 7 of Science of Self-Realization. So Mr. O'Grady says, the problem is to find this spiritual master, to which Srila Prabhupada responds, that is not the problem. The problem is whether you are sincere, right? There's that word again, sincere. Continuing, you have problems, but God is within your heart. Ishvara sarva bhutanam. God is not far away. If you are sincere, that word again, God sends you a spiritual master. Therefore, God is called Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within the heart. God helps from within and from without. Everything is thus described in the Bhagavad Gita. The material body is like a machine, but within the heart is the soul, and with the soul is the super soul, Krishna, who gives directions. The Lord says, you wanted to do this? Now here's the chance. Go and do it. If you are sincere, you say, now, God, I want you, right? As opposed to the other things that we want here in the material world. Continuing, then he will give you directions. Yes, now you come and get me like this. This is how you attain me. This is his kindness. However, if we want something else, that is all right. We can have it. God is very kind. When I want something, he is in my heart directing me and telling me how to have it. So why should he not give directions on how to have a spiritual master? First of all, we must again be eager to revive our God consciousness. Then God will give us a spiritual master, right? So the instructions are always there. He's always giving guidance. But when what we're asking for is material comfort, material stability, things like that, then that's what he is going to guide us to. When we are serious and sincere about spirituality, about understanding our actual nature and God's nature and what our relationship is, then he sends us a spiritual master, right? But that depends on our very unique combination of material attachments and our level of sincerity, right? So depending on those things, we gain access to specific types of authorities, or we can also gain partial access to pure spiritual masters, depending on our seriousness and sincerity. But we gain access accordingly, according to that seriousness and sincerity. So sometimes that means the authorities that are sent due to, again, our unique mixture of different desires. Sometimes they can be transcendentalists, but not devotees. Sometimes we will just be sent pious materialists who we can get some inspiration from, because we still want to sort of enjoy, but we want to do it in a proper way, like a pranamoy kind of way. We don't want to really harm anyone else. So we'll get that kind of person, a person that's very pious, but they're a materialist, right? Sometimes we will be sent neophyte devotees to help guide us, and sometimes we'll be sent pure devotees. But even when the pure devotees are sent, as I mentioned before, whether or not we have full access to what they're presenting, what that pure devotee is offering, that will depend on our seriousness and sincerity. If we still have this mix, if we have this mood of, it's spiritual appreciation, but it's mixed with a deep sense of a need for material benefit, although we're reading the same words, we're hearing the same instructions, we will certainly have a different takeaway, right? We're not going to get full access to that pure devotee, is what I'm saying, until we have the proper mood, until we have the proper mentality. So within that list of different authorities that Krishna from within sends us, I mentioned that, again, depending on our seriousness and sincerity, sometimes we will be sent transcendentalists who are not devotees. So that may have been a confusing phrase, but here's what Srila Prabhupada has to say about that. So this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 5th chapter, verse 4, purport, wherein Srila Prabhupada writes, "The Lord responds from within as the Chaitya Guru, or the spiritual master, as superconsciousness. All transcendentalists other than devotees make no distinction between the individual soul and the supersoul because they miscalculate the superconsciousness and the individual consciousness to be one and the same. Such miscalculations by the non-devotees makes them unfit to receive any direction from within, and therefore they are bereft of the direct cooperation of the Lord." That's a pretty heavy statement. So here we actually see that a mere desire to be a transcendentalist or to escape the temporary material world and tap into our eternal nature does not qualify us to receive direction from within, right? It's not just that, we realize the material world is temporary. We realize that we're eternal. So why can't we just have access to that internal guru, the Chaitya Guru, Krishna from within? Why do we have to have some sort of external manifestation, somebody else who's also has imperfect senses, also is in this material world? Why do we have to go through them, right? Why not go right to the source? Without understanding our own nature, as well as the Supreme Lord's nature, and the unique relationship between the two, one does not qualify for receiving directions from within, right? So that rules out the argument about not needing an external spiritual master, right? The Chaitya Guru understands our precise level of seriousness and sincerity, and he sends us someone who can gradually reveal to us what our true nature is and how it relates to God's true nature, right? And as we accept, understand, and act according to those instructions from the external manifestation of the Chaitya Guru, then we can make further progress and receive further guidance. So then we're actually qualifying ourselves by understanding who we are, who Krishna is, what the relationship is, what similarities we have, but what the differences are, right? Because until we understand that, then we don't understand that relationship. We don't deserve to have that conversation, right? If we don't understand who a person is, why would we expect to be able to have a deep conversation with them, right? And who we are in relation to that person. So this concept is also further clarified in The Science of Self-Realization. Fantastic book, compilation of different conversations, etc., that Srila Prabhupada had. This one from chapter 5, wherein Srila Prabhupada writes, "In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, this dictation of the Lord is received through the transparent medium of the spiritual master. When one is sufficiently trained and acts with submissive faith and love for Krishna under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, the dovetailing process becomes more firm and accurate. At this stage, Krishna dictates from within. From without, the devotee is helped by the spiritual master, the bona fide representative of Krishna. And from within, The Lord helps the devotee as Chaitya Guru, being seated within the heart of everyone. Simply to understand that God is seated in everyone's heart is not perfection. One has to be acquainted with God from within and without, and thus act in Krishna consciousness. This is the highest perfectional stage for the human form of life and the topmost stage in all yoga systems, right? So again, we have this mixture of material desires and spiritual appreciation. Krishna knows from within our sincerity and our seriousness. And since we're not listening to him directly, he sends an external manifestation, uh, very much depending on our level of seriousness and sincerity. We may be getting a transcendentalist. We may be getting a pious materialist. We may be getting a neophyte devotee. We may be getting a pure devotee. We may have full access to that pure devotee. We may have partial access to that devotee, depending on, again, our seriousness and sincerity. But either way, Krishna is sending that specific person or persons to us so that we can gradually get to this one point of understanding who we are, who Krishna is, what our similarities are, what our differences are, what our actual relationship is. And when we're able to act according to that relationship in knowledge, then we become qualified to have that, receive that inner dialogue, right? While still taking that instruction from the spiritual master, because again, transparent medium, shakshadhari tvena. So we are guided, again, according to our seriousness and sincerity. But when our instructor is exclusively and faithfully giving guidance according to Shastra, they are to be accepted as the external manifestation of the Chaitya Guru within. And when we approach said bona fide instructors, whether it's our initiating spiritual master or our instructing spiritual masters, with the proper mood and respect, which is outlined in Bhagavad Gita 434, with humble, submissive attitude, willing to show appreciation by engaging in service. Submissively render devotion. Yeah. When we do it with this proper mood, then we are truly in touch with that instruction, right? So he has seen the truth. So, and we want to see the truth. So it is in our best interest to approach these authorities with the proper mood, with the proper respect, and the proper appreciation and reciprocation by rendering service unto them. So this is how we become qualified to receive those pure instructions. At this point, I want to repeat, it's the last sentence from that quote that was from 4th Canto, 28th chapter, verse 41 purport, wherein Srila Prabhupada concludes that quote with, when one is trained by the spiritual master according to the regulative principles of devotional service and is situated on the platform of spontaneous attachment for the Lord, Raga Bhakti, the Lord also gives instructions from within, right? Again, so we shouldn't take it lightly, the fact that the Lord is there within and he's willing to give instructions. We shouldn't take that lightly and just think that we have automatic access anytime we want. We have to understand that we need to become proper recipients of those instructions, because currently, because of our misuse of free will, we have a whole lot of other, so-called voices in our heads telling us what to do. We have the senses that are telling us to enjoy or to escape dangerous situations, right? We have a lot of things because of our misidentification telling us what we so-called need to do, but we don't actually need to do any of that, right? The only instructions that we need to pay any attention to are the spiritual ones, because then everything else is taken care of if we do that properly. So as it turns out, this seriousness and sincerity that has been coming up in all of these quotes is the only qualification that we should concern ourselves with, right? Again, I just said that we concern ourselves with so many other things because we're getting so many internal instructions, not from Krishna, but from our misidentification, what we're identifying as. So we have these different ideas of how our life should be lived. But this is the only thing that we should concern ourselves with. And what Srila Prabhupada says about that, this is third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th chapter, verse 38, purport, wherein Srila Prabhupada writes, when a living entity desires to serve the Lord in transcendental loving service, the Lord helps the devotees in so many ways as the Chaitya Guru, or the spiritual master within, and thus the devotee can perform many wonderful activities beyond material estimation. So, in context to today's verse here, Lord Brahma, we've been reading the story for a bit. He's a highly qualified individual. He wakes up, finds himself in this strange situation, doesn't understand what to do despite his high qualification, gets that nudge from within, that little hint of tapa. He heard the sound, and so, okay, I have to do some tapasya, right? And then because of that, when he was previously useless, even though all of the ingredients of creation were there, and he had, the material qualification to do it, he didn't have the knowledge of how to do it, right? And so until he was able to receive that, then he could do so many things. Like then, after receiving those instructions, it says here, the devotee can perform many wonderful activities beyond material estimation. He expanded the entire cosmic manifestation, which, I mean, we only perceive a tiny bit of it, but he unfolded all of it out of this very well designed lotus flower, this stem, right? And so he understood through the Chaitya Guru how to do that, how to do his service, and then he did it. So he didn't have to, go to school to learn how lotus stems, work. He didn't have to, he didn't. I mean, he did try at first to figure it out on his own, but he didn't try to go to some trade school or anything like that. No, this is what he did, because no other training can qualify us for what's actually important. But if we actually focus on this, then anything becomes possible, right? Continuing this quote, by the mercy of the Lord, even a layman can compose prayers of the highest spiritual perfection. Such spiritual perfection is not limited by material qualifications, but is developed by dint of one's sincere endeavor to render transcendental service. That word sincere is there again. So these things, they're not limited by material qualifications. So we don't have to become expert in this material thing or that material thing. If by our karma we're already expert in some sort of material thing, great. You can keep doing that. Just do it in Krishna's service, right? Redirect that consciousness from I'm doing this for my benefit to, okay, let's do this for Krishna's benefit, because me doing it for my benefit is going to be temporary. I'm going to run out of pious credits, and what was the point of it anyway? But since somehow, okay, I've built up some piety in the past, I have some facilities. Now let's use them for the ultimate good, right? Use them in Krishna's service. So we can do that, but we shouldn't try to accumulate new karma just so we can become expert in some sort of field that we think is going to help our devotional service. We don't need that. All we need is this sincerity. Continuing that quote. So I'll read that last sentence again, and then I'll continue. Such spiritual perfection is not limited by material qualifications, but is developed by dint of one's sincere endeavor to render transcendental service. Voluntary endeavor is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. Now, again, voluntary endeavor. So we talked before about how sometimes we pray to Krishna. Krishna, I'm a fool and I know it. I know what the real deal is. Please just make me surrender, right? You can take away I'm giving you permission to take away my free will, make me surrender because I know it's the right thing to do. That's not what he wants. He wants voluntary endeavor. He wants us to show, because if we truly felt that way, then it wouldn't be a problem to give up the things that we're attached to, right? We're saying, Krishna, just take all the things away, right? But if we were truly detached from them and truly attached to Krishna, then we wouldn't actually care about those things. They wouldn't be holding us back, right? And so that's what Krishna wants. He wants to see, he wants us to show our love so that he can show us his love. His love is always there. It's always unconditional. But until we're able to show, and it is there, it's our eternal nature as well, but it's just covered. So until we can uncover that and express our love in its pure form, then we're not ready to accept his love in its pure form. So voluntary endeavor is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. And then concluding that section, material acquisitions of wealth or education are not considered, right? So they're not even considered, right? They may be there, they may be helpful. If they're not, don't worry about it. No sense in trying to acquire either of those things. They're not considered. Only this spiritual endeavor, this voluntary endeavor, these are the only qualifications for spiritual perfection, which is great because that means there's hope for all of us. It's not that, people that are born in different parts of the world or have access to different things are, able to attain spirituality quicker, right? They have different facilities, sure. But what we have is enough. We have everything we need, right? The conditioning doesn't hold us back if we actually tap in. Okay. So, in conclusion, we want to talk about what's the end result and why the Lord takes this position of Chaitya Guru internally and then also sends an external manifestation, right? So, to answer both of those questions, Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 22nd chapter, verse 34, purport. Srila Prabhupada is going to answer both of these questions. When we rightly take the direction of the Supersoul, our life becomes successful. He is directing from within and from without. From within, he is directing as Chaitya Guru, or the spiritual master sitting within the heart. Indirectly, he is also helping the living entity by manifesting himself as the spiritual master outside. In both ways, the Lord is giving directions to the living entity. And then, so here's the why. Giving directions to the living entity so that he may finish up his material activities. And then the last part is the end result. And come back home, back to Godhead. So I'll read that again. In both ways means the within and without the instructions. The Lord is giving directions to the living entity so that he may finish up his material activities and come back home, back to Godhead. So he's doing it for that purpose, so that we can finish up these material activities. And the end result, if we take advantage of that, proper advantage of that, is that we get to go back home, back to Godhead. So this is why it's important to understand this concept of the Chaitya Guru, the external Guru. We talked about the dangers of misunderstanding it or only considering part of it. We've talked about what kind of external manifestations of various types of gurus that Krishna can send to us, depending on our own conditioning. And so I hope that we've all just come to the conclusion that any authorities that we're currently accepting that aren't strictly basing their instructions on Shastra, we give them much less respect and attention, etc., praise, and we start giving those who are actually just delivering us pure instructions from Krishna. We give them the respect they deserve, the time they deserve, and we actually apply these instructions, right? So we should value those instructions over and above any other instruction in our life. As Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur pointed out in his Vyavasayatmika Buddhi verse, the commentary to that verse, the orders of the spiritual master should be taken as one's life and soul. That's so. This is the conclusion of today's discussion. So, please, if there are any questions or comments, additions, anything like that, please do so now. Okay. If not,
Haribol Prabhu, very nice class about the super soul, the Lord within the heart. That's the thing in that unless we take the order of the spiritual master very seriously, we want as the super soul won't reveal to us, that we can't, because most of the time we can't even remember that the super soul is within us.
yeah. Certainly don't act as if the Supreme Lord is standing right next to us. That's true.
And we really don't think that we have to act according to what the super soul is telling. We forget about it. So what's the reason of it?
What's the reason we forget? Is that your question?
Yeah. I think me personally, I know a lot of people also don't remember that the super soul is within this.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so the reason that we forget that is we misused our free will. All right, and we falsely identified. So there's the real ego. Ego just means identity. Ego is not a bad word. Ego just means what we're identifying as. So there's the real ego, and that means because we are individuals, so identifying as the servant of Krishna is the real ego. And the false ego is identifying as independent from Krishna. And so when we misuse our free will and we identify with the false ego, this false concept of ourself, then we're identifying with, we think that we're the center, right? And so Krishna, who is actually the center, we don't really want to see him because we see that he'd be doing a much better job and that we're completely unqualified. So we ignore him because we're trying our hand at being the controller and the enjoyer, right? And so that's why we don't actually consider actually that the spirit. So because first of all, we think we're this body, right? Or even an extended version of it. Some people even identify with their family, their property, their country, right? Planet, whatever, right? But usually people at least think that this is where I end. But really, 1/10,000th the size of a tip of hair is the size of the spirit soul, and that's situated transcendently within the heart. And the spirit soul, the Paramatma, the supreme soul, is right there next to us. He's our closest neighbor, right? But yeah, we tend to ignore that because we're not even identifying as the spirit soul, let alone understanding who's standing next to us. I'm identifying as this, sack of flesh and pus, blood, and mucus, and the closest thing to me is this water bottle, right? And so, because of this misidentification, we don't have access to that, right? So to think that, oh no, I should just be able to get these divine instructions, that's ludicrous. But since he is there in the heart and he understands exactly what our motives are, he sends us people that can instruct us based on what our level is. So if we're very much, if we give a whole lot of value on material comfort, then we're just going to get a pious materialist who's going to be able to teach us how to have that material comfort, but also appreciate the Supreme Lord, right? It's not until we actually seriously and sincerely want to know Krishna that we will get full access to a pure spiritual master. We may get some access to a pure spiritual master because Krishna has caused us mercy and the pure spiritual master has caused us mercy. They'll just walk around and preach to anybody. But we won't know what they're saying until we start taking their instructions to heart and applying them and understanding who we are, who Krishna is, and what that relationship is. But yeah, even though he's right there, we always forget it. And that's why, because of that misidentification. And that's why it's important for us to take the instructions of the spiritual master, because his only purpose is to help you properly identify with who you really are, understand who Krishna really is, and understand that relationship, right? So that's why the external manifestation of the Chaitya Guru needs to be there, so that we can prepare ourselves to become proper recipients of those instructions coming from within. Did that help? Is that okay?
Explained it very nicely.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Krishna gives forgetfulness also, Prabhu, sometimes.
Yeah.
I always say, he gives intelligence and he gives everything. And sometimes we are just forgetting certain things. I feel that way. I don't know why. I pray God, just don't give me forgetfulness. Give me, if you give me little bit intelligence also, it's fine. I'll use that. But forgetfulness, and how can I? That's what bothers me all the time, Prabhu.
Well, we ask for it, and so that's what he gives us.
I didn't ask, I'm asking him.
No, that's
Give
what I'm
me
saying.
little bit intelligence, not forgetfulness.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing is, we're asking for some intelligence, but really, we're also asking him for forgetfulness, because to whatever extent that we're actually willing to understand him, that's as much intelligence as we'll get, and we're also going to get as much forgetfulness as we require to maintain our material attachments. Right?
It's true.
So he's doing exactly what he should be doing, and we're not, right? So if we start doing what we should be doing, right, then that forgetfulness will also be taken away, right, and that intelligence will also be granted. So it's all coming from him, but it's coming from him as a result of our seriousness and sincerity, right? Those are always there. Right.
Yeah.
Endeavor. He doesn't want us to just, sign the dotted line because we know it's what needs to be done and that's the agreement. No, he wants us to want it. Right? What's the point if we don't actually want it? He wants to give us what we want. Currently, what we want is to be here in the material world thinking that we're independent controllers and enjoyers. That's the overwhelming desire that we have. And when that overwhelming desire shifts from that back to our original position of understanding our actual nature and Krishna's actual nature and the relationship between us, then that's when we get the intelligence is given to us and the forgetfulness is taken away. As simple as that.
So I don't mind if he gives forgetfulness in material things. I'm happy so that I can reach him. That I can reach him.
Right.
Do the spiritual thing.
As we become attached to him, we naturally become detached to matter because it's inferior.
That's
right?
True.
So it seems like we're forgetting matter, but we're not really forgetting it. We're actually understanding its proper use. Right. And we're using it accordingly. And then what is matter that's used properly? Spirit, because there's nothing but spirit. Everything is made of spirit. We identify it as matter because we're seeing it separately from him. Right. So when we get the intelligence, we're understanding what the thing actually is, what its nature actually is, and how to properly use it. And then when we use it properly, we're not even dealing with matter. We're dealing with spirit. That's the beauty of it. But yeah, it all depends on, I mean, obviously it all depends on Krishna, but it all depends on us to be able to
also
of Krishna's mercy, because we can't do anything on our own. Not a blade of grass moves without his will. But what we can do is we have the minute independence to use our free will properly, act accordingly, and then we become proper recipients to then reconnect to that power that he has. Right. And then
he is within us and he just sits and watches what we are doing.
He patiently waits.
Patiently waits.
It's amazing because when we try to do something like that, when we're dealing with a situation that's just not going the right way, and we're just kind of waiting for someone to, come to their senses and realize that, oh, this isn't, We're not good at patiently waiting. He is. He's the Supreme Lord. He'll wait as long as it takes. He's fine with it.
That's what, he's in within us, but he watches what we are doing and do whatever. I gave you free will, you do whatever you're doing. But I'll keep and watch what you're doing. that is something I always think about. I don't know how I will live. Anyway, thank you very much, Prabhu. Very wonderful class.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, then we can stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripasindobhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.